Hello, welcome to another day of this thing I'm doing that I haven't given a name yet, but I will, and by the time you're watching this, it will have a name. I am gonna talk about space today. I love space. I did not buy this phone case specifically for this project. I did not even buy this when Carrie started it or when she mentioned space or anything. I just knew I wanted to get a space case because my Winnie the Pooh one was rubbing off, and I knew I loved space, and I knew I wanted it to be black, to be honest, because it matches the phone. So I love space. Okay, I think I started getting into like space and all that about a decade ago when I had to do a project at school about the solar system. Maybe more than a decade, I don't know. And I remember just finding it fascinating. No one else cared. Everyone was like, what a joke, who cares about the solar system? But I cared big time. I love space. I think that same year, as part of that project, we had to go to a planetarium, and I think that was the first time I ever went to a planetarium, and it was so cool. I loved it. Again, everyone else was just like, what is this? Who cares? I cared. I loved it. I know that might sound really ridiculous, but I just fell in love with space and planetariums and all that jazz. I think when I came here about 6 years ago, I want to say, I went with my grandmother to the planetarium thing in Greenwich, which was amazing. I'd heard of it, I'm not sure when or where or in what circumstance, but I knew I wanted to go, and I told her, and we did, and I don't know, it was just so fascinating. Like, space just messes with my mind, and I love it so much. Also, when I found out that we were going via Houston when we went to America 2 years ago, I said to my parents, we are going to the Houston Space Center because, I mean, that's awesome and we can't not go. And when we went, I have to tell you, it was so incredible. I've also read quite a number of space books. I've seen quite a number of space movies, such as Interstellar. Interstellar is one of my favorite movies, and I've only seen it once, and I've really got to watch it more, but I just love it. And I saw The Martian, which I loved. There was another space movie which I loved, which I've forgotten, but anything space related works for me. And something like Interstellar, it messed with my mind big time, but I also loved it. I could not stop speaking about it. Everyone who I went to see it with, and who I didn't, said, Raquel, you gotta stop talking about it because it's too much. So I wrote this down quite a number of weeks ago because I'd been making notes as Carrie was putting up her videos about things I wanted to chat about. And one of the things I've written down and that I've always said is I would love to go to space if given the opportunity, but if it wasn't unaffordable, and if there was a bit less of a risk. I would happily go to the ISS, I would happily go to Mars, I would happily go to Pluto, I would happily go anywhere as long as I didn't have to die or spend a lot of money. And a few weeks after I wrote this down, I think my brother said to me that apparently they're now making it that in the year like 20, I don't know what year, but in a couple of years, people can pay to go to the ISS. And I wish I had that money. If I make enough money by whatever year that is, I'm going to the ISS for a year because that just seems so amazing. Also, just on from that, I have had countless dreams where I go up to space and I'm floating in a rocket, and I don't know. I know it's terrifying, but it's so amazing. I also have to say, I know I've already mentioned on this channel before that I love just looking out and seeing the sun and pointing out how green the grass is and how blue the sky is, and people get fed up, but I do the same with stars. If I'm in an area where there are lots and lots and lots of stars, I just lose it. I get so excited, I sit there and just watch the sky for hours and hours and hours on end. For example, quite a lot of years ago, we went 3 weeks in a camper van around New Zealand, and of course in a camper van you can sort of park and stay overnight in the most random desolate areas, and I'm not even kidding, some of the places we stayed at, I can still like envision it, were just so isolated and so, I have no words, it was just so beautiful, and I would happily go back there any day. And yeah, I look at the stars and at the Milky Way, and honestly, I pretty much cry. I don't cry, but I pretty much cry. Also, I think one of the other things for me about space is I very often use it as sort of the reason in my head. And by that I mean, whatever happens, I have this attitude of like, whatever happens, it doesn't matter because we're all gonna die anyway. Now I know that sounds really morbid and awful and I don't mean it to, but I don't know, I guess for me space is like, well, whatever happens, it doesn't matter. If I embarrass myself, if something goes wrong, or if it doesn't go to plan, or if I'm not sure if I should do something but I want to do it but I'm scared, like all that at the end of the day comes back to we're on this tiny dot in this massive universe that is so incomprehensibly large that nothing I do at the end of the day can really matter. So I can just do what I want, and not in the sense of kill people, but in the sense of don't stress. So I think that's where I'm gonna leave it. I have a lot of thoughts on space. I love space. If anyone wants to send me up to the moon, I will go. Or Mars, or ISS, I don't care, I'll go. Actually, wait, one last thing. Pluto is a planet. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Bye, see you tomorrow.